Volgens de rites van de islam.
Bahwa saya sekuat tenaga akan menunjukkan kesejahteraan Republik Indonesia Serikat dan bahwa saya akan melindungi dan mempertahankan kebebasan dan hak-hak umum dan khusus sekalian penduduk negara dengan setia akan memenuhi segala kewajiban yang ditanggungan kepada saya oleh jabatan Presiden Republik Indonesia Serikat sebagai sepantasnya sebagai kepala negara yang baik.
De eerste president van de Verenigde Staten van Indonesië.
Here we see the President of East Indonesia, Sukawati. Later the ministers arrive at the East Indonesian Parliament. The East Indonesian state was formed in 1946 and had an own government, flag and president. What's not unimportant to mention is that they were one of the 16 federal states that were created. After Andi Aziz and his men revolted against Jakarta to prevent East Indonesia from joining a Unitarian state, the men were imprisoned. This would mean the end of the East Indonesian resistance. But before everything was official, the Minister of Justice of the state East Indonesia, Krissuamokil, fled to the capital Ambon of the Moluccas to talk with members of the South Moluccan Council about their future. After all, they had a special status to withdraw themselves from East Indonesia and the United States of Indonesia, and had the option to decide their own future. The South Moluccan Council disagreed with Jakarta to join a Unitarian Indonesian state. So they broke all relations with the East Indonesian state and the United States of Indonesia. Then they decided to proclaim the independence of the Republic of South Moluccas. After the proclamation, Indonesia finally changed the structure of the United States of Indonesia into a Unitarian one on the 17th of August 1950. Actually, they did not have a relationship with the Republic of Indonesia, and the East Indonesian state would soon be disbanded. But Sukarno had a plan to start an invasion on ground, sea and air. Finally, on the 28th of September, Sukarno started an invasion on the capital, Ambon, but already seized the most southern islands, and the island of R.U.S.I, in the months June and July. The war between the Republic of South Moluccas and the Republic of Indonesia would last for 17 years, where approximately between 8,000 and 30,000 people had died on the side of the Moluccans. The resistance came from islands, not only from the Layase Islands, but stretched out until the Cape, Tanimbar and R.U.S Islands. Sukarno wanted to master the territory of Maluku so that they would be incorporated into the Unitarian Republic. It was against the will of the people to join the Republic of Indonesia, because the Indonesian army already killed many of them. And also at that time they just declared themselves independent, and had no relations with Jakarta nor East Indonesia. In 17 years of fighting, Indonesia had sent a lot battalions, approximately 50 up to 100, to control the area. But the war between the two nations has cost many lives. Here, a couple of facts about the case of the South Moluccas. The Korean War between North and South was more important to the United Nations back then. Another fact is that the Republic of South Moluccas is recognized by a few countries. Although the international community knew about the war between Indonesia and Maluku in the 50s and 60s, decades later we witnessed another war that was devised by high-ranked people. The Moluccas, also known as Maluku, were famous as the Spice Islands in the 16th and 17th century. An island group where the indigenous people lived in harmony. Despite their religions, both Christians and Muslims lived side by side, one of the few places on earth. But their harmony would be disturbed in the last year of the 20th century by the Indonesian government itself. Indonesia thought that they could Islamize the Moluccas before the beginning of the 21st century. There were high-ranked officials who were named within the conspiracy. And if the Moluccas would fall, then the rest of Eastern Indonesia and the rest would be next. No one ever mentioned the name of Suharto, but it is quite possible that he was also behind it. The indigenous people appealed for intervention of the United Nations. But just like the 1950s, when they declared themselves independent, Indonesia said no one could interfere. Because according to them, it was an internal case, and not a case for the international community. The indigenous people of Maluku are originally Melanesian. They share a culture like the people of West Papua and the island of Timor, which is rather different than the typical Asian culture. The people knew about the conspiracy that was instigated to erase them from the world map. Although both religions are practiced by the people on the Moluccas, they considered themselves as brothers and sisters, but were forced to fight each other. It was a game played by the bigwigs from Jakarta.
Nein, ich sehe das nicht in erster Linie als einen religiös-ethnischen Konflikt. Ich sehe es ganz klar als eine Instrumentalisierung von ethnischen und religiösen Problemen, die es durchaus gibt. Aber in der Vergangenheit gab es diese auch, diese Spannung, und ist nicht zu solchen gewaltsamen Ausbrüchen gekommen. Ich sehe also klar im Hintergrund Kräfte, die ihre alten Positionen nicht aufgeben wollen. Sie laufen Gefahr, dass sie ihre Privilegien verlieren. Und das ist allerdings nur eine Seite, denn die politische Gewalt muss im Zusammenhang gesehen werden mit anderen, auch kulturellen Hintergründen und Faktoren. Und da kommt natürlich dann Religion, ethnische Werte, Zugehörigkeiten.
in the past few days by a battalion of Indonesia's toughest soldiers. The unit is one of 2 deployed after local security forces proved incapable of quelling the running battles. Many say the city has become too dangerous for unarmed people to go outside.
TNI, Pak Tiasno, Kepala mau menyembuhkan, memulihkan citra TNI di depan rakyat Indonesia, selesaikan masalah Ambon dengan secepat-cepatnya.
It has a strong appeal to even young Indonesians in universities in Indonesia who are disillusioned with the Western capitalistic way and are certainly against the communist socialist system and want to see Islam as a model to form a future society based on the original Islamic state of Muhammad.
Askar Jihad, self-styled holy warriors from Java who flooded Ambon, vowing to drive out Christians.
Dalam upaya dengan cara syariat kita.
Jihad brought a new wave of violence and tipped the balance in favor of the Muslims.
They said if we converted, we would be safe. But if we refused, they would kill us.
Marina and the rest of the villagers were taken to a mosque and forced to convert to Islam at gunpoint. Then, one by one, men and women were led away to a room where they were held down and circumcised.
Sebelum terjadi masalah ini, mereka tadinya baik. Sama saya juga ada teguran baik sekali. Dan mereka tuh, saya juga melayani mereka seperti biasa. Tapi tahu-tahu, ya istilahnya ada musuh dalam diri ini.
Kita ditanyakan beberapa hal, apa kita masuk Islam ini dengan keyakinan atau bagaimana. Terus karena kita kan takut kalau kita tidak masuk juga pasti kita sudah mati semua.
Lalu Pak Presiden itu turun di pistol, taruh pistol di dada bahwa kamu tidak masuk Islam, kamu tidak mau dipermandikan masuk Islam, kamu ditembak mati. Terpaksa kita semua masuk Islam.
Berapa orang?
Sekitar 100 orang begitu, Pak.
Ini semua, rumah-rumah kami terbakar. Hancur semua. TNI yang bakar. Kami anak Uri Meseng, saksi nyata dari kebakaran ini. Nah, sampai kapan? Kalau boleh PBB bisa turun untuk selesaikan ini masalah.
From the island of Ambon the war had spread itself in the Maluku Islands. At the end of the year, 1999, they already counted 15,000 people who had died. While on other islands, it has not been counted yet. In January 1999, a war provoked by the Indonesian government had spread itself through the Moluccas and eventually even reached islands such as Kai and R.U.S I. It is said that more than 500,000 people were displaced. The people of the Moluccas were angry at the government for not helping them. They saw with their own eyes that the army and militants were killing and shooting them and even kidnapping people. Many children, unborn babies and women were victimized by Islamic militants. Their goal was to kill all people of the Maluku archipelago within the end of 1999. Eventually the war would last for 3 whole years. In February 2002, a peace agreement was signed by both Muslim and Christian Moluccans. But this was a scam agreement of the government. Because the war did not start between both religions. It started with a trans-immigrant, who did not want to pay a Moluccan bus driver. They had an exchange of words about it. And a few hours later, approximately 60 houses were burned down already by trans-immigrants and Indonesian army. The peace agreement did not include the Laskar Jihad for an instance. They were not part of the agreement. Instead the army shipped them back to their homes outside the Moluccas. So many Islamic militants were not trialed. They were also not imprisoned. That's what made the inhabitants of Maluku angry. Here on Haruku Island, we see men who came back from the front line to defend their homes and families. Women who cried because they did not know what to do. From traditional to homemade weapons to defend themselves against intruders on their islands. Thousands of casualties fell on the Moluccas. But Indonesia denies that there are more casualties than 10,000. Because it was better that way for the international community. They also denied that the army and Islamic militant fighters had committed genocide. Something the government of Indonesia is ashamed of. And not proud to admit it. When you ask high officials how many victims have fallen on the islands, they will answer about 9,000. But never will they admit that there were more casualties. It is called Indonesian policy to deny the real figures and to prevent international intervention.
Che oggi vuole rivolgere a tutti noi e a tutto il mondo. Ascoltiamo le sue parole.
Damai ormai la città di Ambon capoluogo dell'arcipelago indonesiano delle Molucche, è centro di cruenti scontri che hanno sconvolto la tradizionale armoniosa convivenza tra cristiani e musulmani. Di fronte a tali fenomeni preoccupanti, rivolgo a tutti, e specialmente a coloro che fomentano i disordini, una pressante esortazione ad abbandonare la violenza, causa di innumerevoli sofferenze, e a ritrovare i sentieri della concordia. Desidero inoltre esprimere un pensiero di conforto alle vittime e manifestare spirituale vicinanza all'intero popolo indonesiano, sul quale invoco la benedizione del Signore.
Mr. Shihab, can I ask you one question? Yes, the European countries are very curious when Indonesia will accept an international peacekeeping force in Indonesia. Can you give a statement about that?
No, actually, we don't think about accepting peacekeeping force for Indonesia. We are still insistent that humanitarian aid is only the only way to help Indonesia for the time being.
You will visit Holland on 21st of August. What will the goal be of the visit of the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs? Can you tell me?
No. We will discuss about Moluccas and yeah. Okay.
Kita minta Anda datang kemari untuk merekam pengumuman dari pemerintah mengenai pemberlakuan keadaan darurat sipil di Provinsi Maluku dan Maluku Utara. To be frank with you, we don't know exactly whether the fight is engineered or not, and whether they have casualties or not. What's clear now only that this thing endangers the society, and that's why we use the law.
Apa yang menjadi tanggung jawab dan juga keinginan dari pemerintah Republik Indonesia adalah dengan segera menghentikan segala sesuatu yang selama ini sedang berproses di daerah Maluku yang kita cintai.
Darurat sipil ini bukan membawa kedamaian, tetapi malah memperburuk kondisi yang terjadi di Maluku. Ternyata militer datang ke sana bukan untuk mendamaikan atau mengamankan Maluku yang sedang konflik. Dan konflik itu memang diciptakan oleh pemerintah Indonesia sendiri dengan kepentingan konspirasi politik yang ada di pusat ini. Sehingga militer di sana bukannya mengamankan, tetapi mereka malah membantu laskar jihad. Turut membantu laskar jihad. Bahkan kami lebih ekstrim mengatakan bahwa militer itu adalah laskar jihad.
Ini ada kemunculan keluarga ibu dari Indonesia.
Your people from Moluccas Islands, including those Christians, Muslims, we are just one. No two Moluccas Islands, only one Moluccas people. We came here to express, really, merely to express our desire about what is going on, what has happened in our country.
It looks like during the war people in Maluku have seen that their islands, which is also their home, became a playground for political masters. And they only want peace. And by peace they mean in the form of an own country separated from Indonesia. Faith in the Indonesian government has fallen into pieces. People are holding demonstrations and are yelling that they no longer trust the Indonesian government. In 2002, many political prisoners who sympathized with the independence movement were jailed for treason. The political prisoners in court all said that Indonesia is some sort of puppet state. They only recognized that they separated themselves from the United States of Indonesia, which was legal at that time, and that Indonesia is occupying and oppressing Maluku, and that they are responsible for the war. Alex Maniputi, one of the leaders who was politically convicted, fled to the United States of America a few years later. To bring the independence struggle to a higher level, the Indonesian intelligence was surprised when they heard about it.
Dan saya yakin bahwa sekali lagi saya menghimbau lewat wawancara ini supaya UN, mungkin Amerika, pemimpin Amerika dan Belanda dan beberapa pemimpin yang takut Tuhan dan demokrasi di dunia ini untuk membuka file Republik Maluku Selatan di UN yang sampai sekarang masih disegel, dan itu hak kami untuk itu.